I am announcing this afternoon our intention to table the Common Sense Firearms Licensing Act when Parliament resumes this fall.
That's the Public Safety Minister, Stephen Blaney, who was also on this programming, outlining the government's new approach to guns, saying they are cutting red tape on gun issues while introducing new restrictions for some possibly violent gun owners. Is the government giving gun owners what they want and ignoring the advice of the RCMP, especially on a certain rifle that had been prohibited? Now they're giving amnesty to that. Can you give amnesty to a prohibited weapon? That's another question. Is the new approach really common sense, or is there more politics behind it? The Power Panel's here in St. John's. Tim Powers of Summa Strategies is back. Good to see you, sir. In Toronto, Rob Silver of Crestview Strategy is happy with the Jays win. And with me in studio here, Mr. Capstick, Ian Capstick of Media Style. Always a pleasure to see you, sir. All right, Tim, what's behind the Blaney announcement on guns today?
Well, I think it is. I missed your interview with him. I heard little bits of it earlier. But I think it is generally common sense. You can make the argument that it's ideological and political, but I think it really is more common sense than anything else. I mean, there are duplication of paperwork and regulations. I mean, I was just in Labrador, Evan, with a couple of hunters. They wouldn't let me near a gun, so everybody can feel safe about that. But what I did hear from them often, and wasn't talking about this legislation because it hadn't come to the fore, look, you know, they're honest, hardworking people. They just want it to be simplified. I think what's good in there that I have seen, and I'm not a gun person myself, and I suspect other people who aren't gun people will be happy with this whole notion of a regulated and required safety course. I guess you could just write a test now. This is good. And further and deeper analysis and oversight on anybody who may have had issues with domestic violence. That seems to make sense to me. And you know what? Yeah, the government will probably make some money off of it as well when they go out to party members saying, hey, we're moving forward on something you want.
Ian.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of common sense in this. Listen, they're melding two licenses into one, the acquisition and then the handling license. So that makes a bunch of sense. So I actually overall agree with a good number of the changes that they're making. What I'm significantly concerned about, though, is what looks to be the slow legalization of two semi-automatic weapons, which we do not need in Canada right now. There are about 12,000 of these, whether they're the Swiss Arm Classic Greens or whether they're known as the CZ858, which, by the way, is a variant of a very well-known weapon. Kind of looks like a Kalashnikov, an AK-47 on the outside, but it's really different on the inside. It goes about 200 meters further than that AK-47 does with its effective firing range. I'm really worried about it. That sounds probably a lot of technology for people who don't love guns. I kind of do. You know, shocking, perhaps, for some people to...
So the dip here is
the
gunny here.
I'm familiar with this type of weaponry, and I just don't think it should be in the hands of any individual Canadian.
Now, the RCMP had prohibited the Swiss Classic.
And then the government gave them amnesty over these two types of weapons. And then now it looks like we've got the slow march towards legalization. With 12,000 of them out there, what we should actually be doing is recalling them and getting them out of the hands of Canadians, not legalizing them and getting them into hands of
Well, when that happened, when it was reclassified from a non-restricted to prohibited, the gun owners were furious about that. Rob, where are you on this today?
Well, we haven't seen the legislation, so we're going off of a press release and a press conference. But there is a big gun lobby in this country. It may not be as powerful or as well organized or as well funded or as successful as the NRA is in the U.S., but there is a big gun lobby. And they've been kicking the bejeebies out of the Conservatives for the last year or 2 years. The gun registry is in the long rear-view mirror as far as the gun lobby is concerned, and they were asking for more, and they were using words like betrayal and other strong language. So today, I agree with Ian and Tim. There are some positive things, it sounds like, in this legislation. You know, domestic violence, taking guns away, tests, all those are good things. But the concern is this is the sop of the government to quiet down through the election of the gun lobby, and that's what this is.
I want to show you something. One of the things that struck us here, and I asked the minister about it, is in his press conference he said it's a right for Canadians to possess firearms. Now, I'm not sure what country he was talking about, because it certainly is a right in the U.S. They've got it. It's not in Canada, and the Supreme Court has been asked this, and they have said it's a privilege. Let me show you what the minister said in his press conference, and then what he said in our interview. Check this out.
Possess a firearm is a right, and it's a right that comes with responsibilities.
I
think I'm crystal clear. It's when a right comes with responsibility. For me, this is the case with firearms as with any other right or privilege.
The problem is, 3 or 4 times the Supreme Court has said it's not a right. There's no way you can say it's a right in the Charter. It is a privilege. Rob, let me start with you on that. What do you make of the Minister of Public Safety saying it's a right to bear arms in Canada?
He knew exactly what he was doing. Sometimes we see ministers, Peter MacKay comes to mind, who say things and they were just saying things. He knew that was a speaking point. Clearly it was a speaking point. Not to get semantic with you, there are constitutionally protected rights. In the U.S., the right to bear arms is a constitutionally protected right. As you say, the Supreme Court's been very clear. It's not constitutionally protected here. I have the right to drive 100 kilometers an hour. They could change the law tomorrow, and then I have the right to drive 90 kilometers an hour. There's no constitutional right to speed. But he was playing a game. It was something he was saying to a particular group of people. And as per my previous point, that group of people is the gun lobby in Canada. That's not, and to be clear, a judgmental statement. If you're a gun owner and you're passionate about your guns, you have the right to advocate with the government. But let's not pretend that it's coming from anywhere other than the big gun lobby, what he said today in terms of rights and what this policy is emanating from.
But you're talking about talking points, and Rob always speaks his mind, but there might be other liberals who would use that particular talking point that Rob was invoking about the NRA and others. You look at people who have come out, I mean, it depends who you classify as being in the gun lobby, I suppose, but most of the people who have come out and supported this today, including the Canadian Police Association, who really aren't the NRA, are hunters and anglers, and they're very different people. I think the word to focus on there that you played, Evan, in the Blaney clip is responsible, because I think a lot of those responsible gun owners who are hunters and anglers get mightily pissed off when that NRA comparison gets invoked, because they do not see themselves in any way like that. And the Conservatives have been good to them. It is true, hunters and anglers, because I think they recognize they are responsible and legitimate individuals who simply want to hunt and fish.
Oh, come on. I've had it out with the hunters and anglers just on this set after they've gone and said some of the craziest things about semi-automatic weapons and gun control in this country. No, hunters and anglers are pretty much alongside of our friends in the NRA in the United States, and that is pretty much clear. No, I mean, I think that the political reason for the Conservatives doing this is very clear. There was a flood in High River in 2013. The RCMP moved in, and they seized a considerable number of guns from those houses, and guess what? There's a lot of votes, not just in Alberta, but in a lot of places with people who didn't really like that. So I think that what Steve Blaney here is doing is coming to the forefront with that and the RCMP's move to ban, quite frankly, and put them onto the restricted, the FTR list, the list that isn't available, by the way, to every ordinary Canadian, only to gun shops and the police. Their decision to put Swiss Arm Classic Greens and the CZ585s on that list really made this government angry, because it made people who should not be advocating for semi-automatic weapons angry. And those are hunters and anglers. We can't pretend
just if I can just respond to Tim, me saying that the government felt they had to do something on guns before the election to quiet down the gun lobby doesn't mean that once we see this legislation that 98% of the legislation may not be perfectly reasonable. We don't know, but that doesn't change the fact of where I think, at least, this was emanating from.
All right, I got to take a break. I will say, this is the quote from Mr. Blaney when I said the Supreme Court has explicitly said on 3 occasions, it's not a right, it's a privilege. I quoted the Supreme Court to him, and I just, I hear a lot of political stuff every day here, and this was one that it is a right that comes with a responsibility, and that's a privilege.
Yeah, it's gibberish.
I'm just trying to decode it. And listen, I don't know what it is, but it's whatever it is, that's what I'm trying to decode here. All right. Powers, Capstick, and Silver are back for round 2 after this break. Stay with us. And that is